Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, even as we speak, the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, is delivering a lengthy speech.
Lengthy speech.
We were hoping to listen to the speech and then give a commentary on it, but unfortunately, speeches by figures like Nasrallah, they're not within the usual human measurements of time.
I've read some of his speeches, and it's very much, and this is not a criticism, it's just an observation. It's very much like a story. He's telling a story, okay?
Yes.
This is, if you want a press release, you have to kind of think in a different way, and you're going to have to listen to the whole thing to get your press release, because he's telling a story, a very long story. It's very detailed. A lot of the things are inside baseball too. Let's be honest, okay? It has to do with internal Lebanese politics. It has to do different factions through the region. You really have to know your stuff to understand everything he says. I'm not saying you have a general knowledge, you have a good idea what he's saying, but this guy is somebody you don't trifle with, okay?
Right. So I think he even as we speak, he's still speaking and may go on speaking for quite a long while. So, in due time, we'll give...
well, at the very least, George and I will take care of it on Sunday, at the very least.
So we'll take care of it then. In addition, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel, and the stories appearing in the mainstream media are that he has gone to Israel to plead for humanitarian pauses. So not pleading for ceasefires, but for humanitarian pauses. So it kind of reinforces what we were saying the other day, which is that the United States is getting cold feet. I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, we're with you, October the 7th, greatest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust. But, with day after day of these images from Gaza, it's having an impact. And it's having an impact on public opinion, and it's having an impact within the Democratic Party itself, if not in the Republican Party, but within the Democratic Party. I mean, you do have a kind of a left liberal faction that is very wary of this kind of thing. Whether the Rashid Tlaib types, even AOC. Now we have Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut, the Chris Van Hollen. I think he's from Maryland. And while they're still supporting Israel, well, not Rashid Tlaib, but while they're still supporting Israel, they are bringing up the issues of the humanitarian crisis. Even Bernie Sanders, gutless though he undoubtedly is, even he's bringing up the humanitarian crisis. So for the Democrats, this is a little bit of a problem. Not for the Republicans. Republicans, they're happy, good. But for the Democrats, it is, and that's why Biden, I think, feels he has to do something, but he can't do much because he's pretty much his spokesperson, this Karine Jean-Pierre, had already said it's disgusting and despicable to call for a ceasefire. So he can't really call for a ceasefire, so he can call for these humanitarian pauses. But I think that it is significant that, after all, what are the media running with? The story they're running with, Blinken is in Israel to urge a humanitarian pause. So he's not in Israel to say, hey, right on, and we're right with you, but humanitarian pause. Anyway, what do you think, Peter?
Yeah, well, reality has a strange way of catching up with you, okay? The original statements were, as long as it takes, 2.0 Middle East, and what are the implications of that? Well, obviously, Netanyahu and his coalition emergency government said, thanks for the pat on the back, and we're waiting for that 14 billion. Let's get to it, okay? Right. And again, leader after leader after leader streaming into Tel Aviv, they're putting their name on this, okay? And a lot of these people, they're not very bright. They take cues, it looks like, from Washington, and they just follow in suit. And then they're beginning to realize that, oh, there's 100,000 people in London protesting this, some of the biggest protests in recent memory, okay, on this issue. Okay, so yeah, I think cold feet is appropriate, and somebody like Blinken, he's beginning to realize is that beginning to question who's in charge, who's making these decisions, and he's catching up. And the United States has an enormous sway if it does it in a concentrated, focused way. The Israelis will always interpret the words the way they want to. Okay. And of course, Israel and the United States during these conditions don't want any daylight between them, okay? Because it's a joint front. But I think Blinken is beginning to realize that he doesn't have, everything changed after that attack. The Jordanians are like, whoa, we're not even talking to the Israelis. We might chat with the Americans, but we need something more definitive. The Saudis are not going to come to the rescue. As George and I are speaking, the leader of Hezbollah is speaking. Blinken has there's a lot of limited options right now, and I think he's just quickly realizing it. He's a very, very shallow person. Okay, I don't know, George. When I listen to him, talking very seriously before he gets on the plane, it's just all cliches. I mean, what is the policy beyond your cliche?
Well, that's the thing, that they don't really have a policy. I mean, they rushed to say, well, we're with Israel, and Israel must do whatever it needs to do to defend itself. But as day goes by, and people watching, there's nothing you can do. I mean, the media can't turn their eyes away from this. However much they may like to, but they can't turn away from this. And so, you see these images, and these are particularly startling images because it's children. So people watch, the bloodied bodies of children, and that's very hard for people to take. Because Gaza, they have a very high, the women there have a very high fertility rate, so it's half of the population are children. So when people watch this, children getting killed, or this family, 6 children were killed, that's very hard to take. I mean, there's a limit. The people will not be able to bear it for very much longer.
Well, but particularly, George, when you look at the high casualty rate of children, I mean, you might not use the word, but you're going to say, how is this proportional? I mean, sure, you could take Israel has the right to self-defense and protect itself, but how with these kind of images, it's hard to, there's the justification gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Okay, right. And I think, this is, the effectiveness of social media. I mean, this is really, as someone said to me, this time the genocide will be televised because it is. Okay, well, yeah. Very different environment, even before, even if we go back to 2014.
Well, that's right, and that's why, I mean, my feeling is that this Israeli operation will follow the arc of the previous operation, which is there'll be a point at which Israel has to bring it to an end, because it will be in danger of the worst scenario possible for Israel, which is to lose the United States. Basically, that's, as you said, most of the time there's they make sure that there's no daylight between them. But there comes a point at which with so many images of dead and dying children, that the Americans are going to say, well, we can't go on signing on to this. I mean, you have to bring this to an end. So I have to think that this will be similar to 2009, 2014, 2017, that Israel is just going to have to say, okay, we've done, we killed, all these Hamas people. Of course, Hamas will still be there. But the whole idea that, you get from some Israeli publicists, and they come on the media, this is it, this is the last war, we're going to finish Hamas off once and for all, we're not going to have another war. Yeah, that's big talk. You don't have the resources, you don't have the will, and above all, you're dependent on your great patron, who certainly isn't going to sign on to this mass slaughter of children.
Well, you're absolutely right, because if there's one thing to say, we support Israel and its endeavors for self-defense and defense. Okay, you can say those words, but 14.2 additional $1 billion, two aircraft carrier battle groups, putting bases in the Middle East on alert. There's skirmishes, missiles coming from here to there, getting close, if not hitting American assets. That's a commitment. Okay, I mean, it's one thing, for let's say like Norway, we're for Israel. Okay, and then that's it. The press release is over. Okay, but this is more than a press release. This is more than words. And the issue of Palestine, it's a lot more generational. I mean, that issue is very important, like on college campuses. After that, it doesn't really translate into much policy effectiveness, with the exception of some elements of the Democratic Party and the progressives. But it's still very much a young person thing. I remember when I was at the university. Okay, so there's a feeling of culpability. I mean, we are part of this. Okay, right. What Israel does, and we back it up. We are culpable, and I think that's what worries more and more people. And like we've been stressing over and over again, I've watched a lot of to be honest with you, George, I've kind of tapered down on watching it. I mean, you could just watch it just so much, let alone trying to imagine what it's like. I mean, just watching it is hard.
Right. No, that's right. So that's part of it. I don't think at the moment that it's translating into any kind of a move towards some political settlement. I think that's beyond the will and the ability of the Biden administration to start pressing.
Well, I think as you said, they want to control, they want to adjust the narrative.
Right, exactly. So
they're not going to change their behavior.
Humanitarian. No. But the problem for the Biden administration is that you've got these Republicans, many of them are just like rabid dogs, and they are ready to accuse Biden of selling out our greatest ally in the world, our dearest, closest, most adoring friend, and you're selling them down the river. So that's a problem. I mean, without question, so what I was saying earlier, yes, the Biden administration is embarrassed by all this, and it's clearly damaging. On the other hand, they're worried about this accusation. You're selling out Israel. I mean, they're ready. The Republicans are ready to go out with that message.
But see, this time round, this is the fifth time round for the Gazans. Okay, fifth time. But previously, George, it was always there must be a ceasefire. See, that's your starting point. The Biden administration didn't do that. Okay. So they've almost kind of canceled that as a policy option right now, because we've had such 3+ weeks of intensive bombing. So that was the first mistake they made. That would have given some leverage with the Israelis. Okay, what does it mean a ceasefire? Okay, and then you go through all of that. But it's like they gave their get out of jail free card away to say just take it. That's a cardinal mistake.
Right. Yeah. No, it definitely is. And of course, the notion of a humanitarian pause is itself a kind of a misnomer. It sounds like what humanitarian pause just before you go and beat the living daylights out of them,
or a humanitarian pause to throw the 40,000 guest workers from Gaza in Israel. So you want a humanitarian pause so you can throw those 40,000 people into the mix. Okay, that's not humane. Okay,
right? No, of course it isn't. But they feel that they have to do something, so they go for the humanitarian pause. But they're not in any position, because the moment the Biden administration were to use the word ceasefire, first of all, they've already, that Karine Jean-Pierre and said it's disgusting and despicable, and they've ruled it out, the ceasefire. But if they were to change their policy and say, we're now pressing for a ceasefire, they will immediately come under attack from the Republicans. I mean, that's to a person, you are selling out Israel. You're demanding a ceasefire. That means you're allowing Hamas. You're for Hamas. You support Hamas.
It only benefits Hamas.
Exactly. So Biden has got himself into in another war, and he's not. But he's too cowardly essentially to do what of course he could do. I mean, he really could do what Reagan did to Menachem Begin. He says, well, enough, we're not taking this anymore. He's not going to do that. And so, but I still think that ultimately this situation cannot go on. I mean, that it's already becoming more and more difficult for more and more Democrats to go on supporting this.
I usually don't do this, and I don't really like when people do it too much. But if Trump were president and he told Netanyahu, knock it off, I think Netanyahu would knock it off. But not with Biden, okay? Because Biden is that the Biden administration pulled the rug underneath themselves. They ratioed themselves at the very beginning right here, and it gave Netanyahu and the Israelis an upper hand with the narrative. But you said, and you can't take those words back. Now, what Blinken is saying, I don't know, George. It just makes my hair stand up, and I don't have much. Okay, we're talking about two-state solution. I mean, really, you need to start talking about a ceasefire first. Okay, when they're talking, they do this with Ukraine all the time. The post-war environment. I don't even remotely give a nanosecond to any of that. I'll jump off that bridge when we get to it, but we're not near that. Okay. So when he's talking, when he's on the tarmac, going back, doing his Henry Kissinger-like shuttle, which obviously is something he's trying to emulate. Okay. It's not working. No. It's not working. Okay.
No. No, that's right. It's they're doing that kind of thing, trying to talk to others as if others want to get themselves involved in this. So you go to the king of Jordan. Well, what does he want? He doesn't want to get involved in this. You go to Sisi in Egypt. He doesn't want to get involved in this. He's basically saying it's your baby. I mean, you got we've kind of been telling you for years and years and years that this is a big problem, and that you can't just simply keep ignoring it. It is a big problem. So the whole idea, you got all this, again, American politicians, berating these Arab leaders. Why don't they do something? Well, why should they? I mean, they didn't create this problem. It was the United States and Israel kind of created this problem. They've ignored all of the Arab initiatives in the past, all the various peace plans and everything. That you ignore this, essentially they took this over. Hey, we're running the peace process. Well, where is that peace process? And so now they want, oh, well, please help us out. Maybe you can intercede with somebody or other and something. No, I mean, we're not getting involved.
George, I'm glad you brought up Egypt and Jordan. It was explicit. To make peace with Israel, you got to deal with the Palestinian problem. And okay, they made peace. They exchanged ambassadors. They have embassies and all that. But Israel didn't do what it signed up to do. And so you asked the Jordanians and you asked the Egyptians, can you help us out here? I said, we already did.
Exactly.
We already did. And we were isolated and shunned in the Middle East for decades for what we did.
Right.
So how dare you come to us and help you out of a jam? You took it. It was your peace process. It was Camp David and meeting at the White House, a Rose Garden and all that. You wanted it. You got it. You figured it out. That's buyer's remorse.
That's right. That's exactly it. I mean, so, and then, you had Trump with his, again, that whole idea that we could just simply ignore this problem, which is the repeated American problem. And then he said, yes, so we'll have the Abraham Accords and pretend it's not there. Pretend this problem isn't really there. And then Biden just simply built on that. Biden didn't do anything different from Trump. Just again, in fact, even worse, because he wanted to add on to the Abraham Accords, the big prize, which was Saudi Arabia. So if Saudi Arabia normalizes relations with Israel, then, basically, well, what's left of the Palestinian cause? I mean, it has no champions at all,
Except for Iran.
Other than Iran. But, Iran is a bit of outside things. It's Persia. It's not part of the Arab world. It's Shia, which is a minority in the Arab world. But, Syria, well, Syria is still there, but Syria is embroiled in its wars. So that's it. You would say, well, the issue's over. Forget it. And it hasn't happened. And it was always obvious that the issue isn't going to disappear. So for the United States now to come along and ask, oh, well, maybe the Gulf states are going to help us out. Maybe, you can put in a word. I'm not quite sure exactly what they're supposed to do. Whom are they supposed to influence? I think on this issue.
What's really pathetic in all of this is that, when you go back to that really nonsensical Oval Office address, how America needs to lead, indispensable nation and all that. Well, you have shown no leadership whatsoever. Nope. I mean, you just talk the talk, but you don't have, I think they just don't have the intellectual moral fortitude to actually address this issue. I mean, they're in hip deep here. What they started, what they said at the very, very beginning has indelibly marked their position as this conflict goes on. And it doesn't look good for the United States, okay, at all. And how this plays out, again, everyone, George and I don't want to over-exaggerate the impact of this issue on American domestic politics. It enlivens and it angers a small but very vocal group of the electorate, okay? Most Americans will say, oh, Israel, yeah, go, yeah, we back Israel. Let's leave it at that, okay?
Well, that's right. I think
they're in their car and they hear the news and then they change to country music, okay? I mean, that's it.
But I think it's hurt Republicans to the extent that having carved out this niche for themselves that, hey, we're non-interventionists, we're against forever wars, yep. which was very useful for Trump. It won them the election in 2016. And then now they've kind of lost it. Now they so suddenly, well, that only applies in this case. But now here, when we come to the Middle East, you're willing to go for a forever war, because if ever there was a forever war, then it's the Middle East. I mean, you just got out of well, you're still in Iraq. But now you're kind of, you want to escalate. You want attacks on the United States everywhere in the Middle East. You want to get troops, boots on the ground in Israel, which some of these Republicans do want, American boots on the ground.
Well, they're already.
I mean, Americans, voters really don't want to go down that path.
Yeah, but see, this is what makes it so pernicious, George, is that we're against forever wars. We're against these stupid
wars. Stupid wars. That was Obama. Yeah.
We could get all the different catchphrases, except. Right. But when you say except, then it invalidates your entire argument. It's a principle that is universal and should be universally applied. Right. But you can't say except.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course, that's what Obama did, because Obama said, well, I'm not against all wars. I'm just against stupid wars. So he said, yeah, well, Iraq was a stupid war, but Afghanistan, that was a good war. And so he said, well, we leave Iraq, which Obama did sort of, but he escalated the American involvement in Afghanistan. So that went on until 2021. So that was Obama's brilliant decision. Well, I'm just against stupid wars. But that's the point. I mean, so and again, there's the issue of Republicans are no longer, or at least conservatives, are in favor of cracking down on free speech. They had this great issue, there they were, boom, hey, we're for free speech. We're against government threatening individuals and threatening to imprison them. We're against, we're with Julian Assange, for free speech. And suddenly, lo and behold, you want to ban, all sorts of.
That's such a fabulous point, okay? Because again, the whole issue of Israel invalidates so many other issues, like freedom of speech. Or for freedom of speech, we can't criticize Israel. Okay, if you criticize Israel, you're an anti-Semite. Okay, and then get that list of students together. That sounded like the Democrats to me.
Exactly. You had the moral high ground, and then you've lost it. And now suddenly, hey, you're just saying, well, okay, you're here on this issue, you're sort of a free speech, but now, I mean, you're just ferocious. I mean, in all the crackdowns that you want to do, anti-Semitism, this is and which becomes this ubiquitous term. I mean, anything at all is suddenly anti-Semitic, and so I think that's it. Once Republicans then put themselves I think, on a very, they basically ceded, if that's even possible, they ceded the high ground to Biden. That you never want to get yourself into that position.
Well, and particularly, when we're ceding something to someone like Joe Biden, I mean, that hurts. That hurts a lot. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, this is the worst president of my lifetime by a long shot.
Yeah,
okay.
Easily.
I mean, he's really distinguished himself in how poorly he governs. It's extraordinary to me. And this is not like East Timor, which it was a tough case there over there. It was very violent and all that. But this is the Middle East. Okay, the stakes are really, really high, and you send Blinken, get on the plane, figure something out. That's what it sounds like to me.
Right. Yeah.
And I think Blinken is probably happy being on the plane, okay, because nobody's calling him or something, okay.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. It's I mean, it's an extraordinary thing that here we have the United States, and this is, it's gone on for a long time. The United States is clearly in a position to do something, and it's unwilling to do it, and thus becomes essentially a complicit in these crimes, even though basically, it hasn't done the bombing itself, but it's now become complicit, and is unable even to extricate itself out of this. I mean, it's like, because, all the people, they listen to Nasrallah, and Nasrallah, he's very unambiguous. He says, okay, he attacks Israel, boom, but who stands behind Israel? The United States. That's
all.
That's it.
With the exception of some weapon system, it's all American. Okay, all the ordnance is American. Okay, the Israelis have certain drones. That famous tank they have, that's theirs. That's genuinely made in Israel. But ordnance, that's all American, and it's really interesting. I mean, I don't want to slip my mind, but the ICC, boy, they're quick to point out war crimes, aren't they? Except, here we go again, except.
Right. That's right. Yes, the ICC was notably absent. I always love it when in the media they report, well, ICC is not because Israel is not part of the Rome Statute, so therefore,
but ICC has jurisdiction of the Palestinian territories.
Exactly. So, well, of course, the ICC investigators don't have access to Gaza because so. That didn't, that's never stopped the ICC. I mean, the ICC is very good at throwing around indictments and arrest warrants without any access to territory. Well, they did that with Libya. When they issued the indictments of Gaddafi in 2011, they hadn't done any investigation. They just you give them some reports. So here are these reports. I mean, the ICC, even as we speak, has a lot of information. You have all the footage. I'm sure there's lots of witness testimony. Human Rights Watch can easily provide them. Here are the depositions from some people. You've got enough there to start issuing indictments. Let's do lunch sometime.
It's except, and it's short circuits the entire artifice that's called, the rules-based order. That is, rules-based order, RIP with this right now, okay? And of course, you're going to have, Western legacy media spinning it, it's unfortunate that Israel has to do it, but it's for peace, it's for the better, and all. Will go there. The rest of the world will say, no, you wanted this, it's yours, you figure it out, and however the chips fall, you are responsible for it. That's where we are.
That's right. That's exactly right. We should say, just as we conclude, that Vasily Nebenzia, the Russian permanent representative to the United Nations, caused a little bit of a stir the other day when he said, well, Israel doesn't actually have a right to defend itself because it's an occupying power. And as an occupying power, it doesn't have a right to defend. So it can defend its own territory, but it can't really defend itself when it's occupying somebody else's territory. That was an interesting little excursion. Of course, he's absolutely correct. So that, you know, if you're occupying somebody else's territory, you don't actually have this right to defend yourself. I mean, as a matter of fact, you will defend yourself, but it doesn't. You don't have some sort of a legal right to defend something. Like, let's say you have Germans who occupy France, and then, you know, and they say, well, we have a right to defend ourselves, you know, because we were shot at by, you know, some resistance fighters, you know, we were killed. They killed us, you know, the swine. They tracked us down and killed us. So we have a right to defend ourselves. No, you don't have a right to defend yourself. You're occupying someone else's territory.
Well, it's international law is always inconvenient for the West. Okay, they love to invoke it against their adversaries and their enemies. When it comes to their friends and allies, they're very hesitant to use it, and that's why, particularly Americans, but I would say the English-speaking world in general, know very little about international law, because it's very rarely used as an argument for policy. Very rarely, because, well, when you're strong, you can do what you want. Okay, I mean, international law was invented to put a check on power and the powerful. Okay. It's failed. It just simply failed.
Of course it's failed, because of course, for that very reason you just said, because if you're powerful, you say, well, it doesn't apply to me. It applies to you because you're weak and we can impose this on you, but it doesn't apply to me. And I mean, it's always been this, the hypocrisy. I mean, you know, people, you know, extol Nuremberg, but of course, right at the heart of Nuremberg was a fraud, which was the only people who were put on trial were the losers. And so all of the war crimes that were committed by the Allies, not one of them was punished.
War crimes. What war crimes, George?
War crimes, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Well, there weren't any.
Exactly, there weren't any. So, and that's the point. And, you know, so, hey, Serbia, boom, we're going to throw the book at you, you know, boom, you know, we're going to put you all on trial, and, you know, humanitarian law, you know, you want, well, there's war crimes, and maybe genocide as well, boom, because Serbia is a little country, and we can just punch it, and they're going to have to take what they can. It doesn't apply to us, you know. That's because that's it, and that's really the problem with this whole, you know, bogus thing about international law, international criminal court, and so on. And I mean, I remember, Peter, you some years ago, you had on Crosstalk, you had something on the ICC, and I took part in it. And there were some human rights guys there saying, "Oh, well, I'm looking forward to the day when the United States accepts the jurisdiction of the ICC. You know, whoa, sometime in the future that's going to happen." It's never going to happen. Never. The United States isn't going to accept the jurisdiction of anybody over its actions.
Before we finish, I want to put a marker down. There's reports that Biden personally has cold feet about this displacement of the Gazans into Egypt. I don't think that train has left the station yet. I still think that's very much a possibility, and I think that's one of the reasons why Blinken has gone back into the region to try to kind of shape. I don't, at this point, I think it would be a total failure, but I'm thinking that they think somehow that can be a viable option. And the United States has a lot of leverage over Sisi and the Egyptians. Okay, so it's not a done deal yet. It's unlikely, but I think that, you know, the Biden administration is beginning to realize the gravity of the situation, and they're scrambling and they're panicking. I just find it one of the great ironies that at least makes me put a semi-smile on during all of this, George, is that Al Jazeera is a real thorn in their side, okay? But the U.S. has its largest base in the Middle East in Qatar, okay? Right. The Qataris have put themselves into a very sweet position because, strategically speaking, they are at the center of so much of what the United States continues to do in the Middle East. And then they have Al Jazeera, okay? Which, you know, to be fair, it's only on the Palestine issue that I ever watched them. Everything else, I see their biases and I don't really like it. there's good reporting there for the most part. So, you know, so if you're going to go to the Qataris, again, you know, up shit creek without a paddle.
Right, right. No, that's right. I mean, I think just going back to your point about the Gaza, I think that would be just for any Egyptian leader to embark on this would just be suicide. I mean, he'd be committing
Well,
suicide.
maybe
Not
there would
anybody.
be another Egyptian leader.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we saw exactly what happened to Anwar Sadat. Because I mean, there's no upsides for Egypt.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you know,
yeah, but you know, we try to
get hated by the Arab world, and this will become, you know, Hamas will just simply insert itself there in Sinai and continue its war against Israel. So,
well, that will be somebody else's problem. See, that's always it, you know, because what is so infuriating for me, George, in our lifetime, the two-state solution, you and I have heard it 100 million times, okay? And there were opportunities and they were missed, okay? And they were intentionally torpedoed. Okay, so you want to start talking about it now. Anyone that's doing this now should be ashamed of themselves, or they're just plain ignorant. Okay, right. You know. So what my point is, George, is that they're grasping at straws. They're going to. We could hear some very, very bizarre proposals over the next few weeks.
Well, I think that's right, but that's why, because I think it is so bizarre that I still think that the likeliest scenario is basically Israel is just going to say, you know, calling it a halt, because there's going to be limited amount of more destruction that he can do. I mean, you know, how many more people are there left to kill? So they're going to say, well, you know, there's just by the law of diminishing returns, but they haven't solved the problem. That's it. They haven't solved the problem, because whoever's in charge in Gaza after Israel ends this will have exactly the same attitude towards Israel as the current leadership, and they will continue the war. I mean,
and will have learned lessons for the next round. Okay,
right.
One caveat here, and it's interesting because I've been looking at some maps here. There's one quasi possible out for Israel is just to reoccupy the north and just shove the people into the southern part of Gaza and just to control the north. Basically, you know, putting literally the squeeze, okay? And then you have, you know, 2.2 million people in half the space. So Gaza is 5 miles wide and 25 miles long. Think how small that is.
Right.
Look how tiny that is. And they're going to cut that in half. And then you're going to have even more concentration. And so are they gambling on people will be so desperate, they'll be so densely congested that they'll, you know, open the gate, I want to go, okay? But then, you know, like the quandary is the Egyptians said, not so fast.
Yeah, that's right. No, like, I mean, I think they definitely could try that. In fact, they probably will try that. It just still seems to me far too difficult a project even to do that. That's a huge undertaking. I don't think Israel has the resources for something like that. It's a bloody big operation to push 1 million people, you know, out of territory and just shove them down. I mean, you need a lot of resources, and you need a lot of willpower. And I don't know whether Israel really has that. It's one thing to start bombing, you know, that's easy. You know, you just send missiles and you bomb, and then you get your spokesperson to say, oh, well, we have to be fighting a war. You know, so, but another thing to go in and actually do it yourself, to start, you know, shoving, you know, women, children, babies, and everything. You know, well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But you know, one mistake begets another. So buckle up and brace for impact, because this is far from over. The tragedy will continue, and it reflects just how unimaginative, when push comes to shove, these people in power and what to do. Okay, because as George and I have said over and over again, nobody in the Middle East wants to put their fingerprints on this. This is the U.S. wanted it. You got it. You bought it. It's yours. Yep. All right, everybody, it's The Goggle with Peter and George. We're going to keep an eye on this, obviously. This is Friday. The weekend, most people are very happy about it. George isn't, okay?
Right.
my point is, George, is the next live stream is on Tuesday.
Next live stream was on Tuesday. Come with comments, criticisms, and suggestions. And then think about little Buddy, because Buddy has made clear that the tip jar situation is deeply unsatisfactory. And the problem is that, as I keep pointing out, is that Buddy blames me. He's not.
Well, George, I have to break it to you. He's calling an emergency security council meeting.
Exactly. He's got the security council.
And he's going to depose you.
He's going to, exactly. He's going to be I will be the target. You know, that's it. You know, I'm the person who's responsible for it. And he's going to try and get a vote to oust me. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in his tip jar. You know, it might calm him down for a little while, but I think that UN Security Council meeting is on the cards. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. And above all, you know, I need, you know, him to get it off my back. It's not going to happen. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.